I came to myself in a room with dim lights. My head was pounding horribly. What am I doing here? I tried to stand up, but I felt the straps under the sheet. What was going on? Suddenly, a disheveled old man in a scientist's robe ran up to me. The old man with the mad look said that now it was possible to start experiments and left the room in a hurry. My stomach went cold. I pulled my hand up with all my might, and the straps began to creak. I yanked my hand again and the strap snapped. Wow, how strong I am. It's better to leave this place. I ran into the hallway in just a sheet. Creepy scientific instruments hung everywhere. What was he doing here? I already saw the exit, but suddenly I noticed in the mirror that the sheet had fallen off me. What's the matter with me? I stepped closer, dropped the sheet to the floor, and was speechless. I looked like some kind of robo-monster. 85% of my body was made of iron and parts connected by wires. But I had a human head. But then I heard the scientist's voice behind me. Where are you going? Panic seized me, and I ran for the door as fast as I could. The old man ran after me. It seemed that he was about to grab me. Out of desperation, I hit the door with my shoulder and it flew out with a crash. I didn't know where to run because I didn't even remember where I lived. Random passersby shouted at my back that I was a freak. I ran to a parking lot, hid among the cars, and looked around. There was no pursuit. The thought of this creepy scientist catching me made me feel uneasy. I sat in the parking lot until the evening and did not dare to go out. I looked at the cars and realized the last thing I remembered was getting into an accident. And I was in a wedding dress, but I didn't know if I was a robot even then. My memories were very fragmentary, but if I had a wedding, then there was a groom. That's something. I needed to find him somehow. Only he could help me remember who I really was. Night fell, and I ventured out of my hiding place to find a quieter place. Suddenly, a red light flashed on my chest. I didn't notice it at first, but soon my vision began to darken. Maybe I was running out of charge, like on my phone. I needed to try to charge myself. Oh man. Then an electric car passed me noiselessly. I barely managed to jump away, but stop. It was also somehow charged. I needed to find an electric vehicle charging station urgently. With the last of my strength, I trudged along the road. I thought I was going to pass out when I saw the lights of a station in the distance. If only they had electric recharging points. I quietly crept up to the station, looked around, and saw no wires, only hoses with gasoline. I was desperate, but suddenly, in the corner, I noticed a place with a wire. The station attendant was asleep behind the cash register. I crawled over to the wire, pulled it out, and plugged it into the socket on my chest. And wow, it fit! The light stopped blinking, and I felt my strength returning. But then a car pulled up at the station and shone its headlights on me. Heck, I looked around. The station attendant woke up and already noticed me. I didn't want to be arrested for theft. I took off, and in a couple of seconds, I was already very far away. When I was sure there was no pursuit, I stopped and sat down on the bench. Did I have to steal electricity from stations for the rest of my life now? In my desperation, I did notice a guy walking up to me. I wanted to run away, but he began to examine me with the words, "Wow, what a costume. What was he talking about?" Suddenly, the guy asked me for a link to my TikTok. What is TikTok? The guy laughed and showed me the app and 2 favorite accounts, Mermaids and Fire Girl. Popular superheroines. He decided that I was the same. I refused, but the guy thought I was being modest and still took a picture with me. I couldn't believe that someone would like me, because a bunch of people on the street just called me a monster. When he left, I thought about what he'd said. If this mermaid succeeded, I could also become famous. And then the groom from my past would see me and find me. This was the only way I could find out who I really was, a robot or a human, but I needed to get money for the phone. The next day I went to the park. I decided to take a picture with the children for money. The guy wanted a picture with me. At first, no one approached me, and I already thought that this was a stupid idea. But gradually, a whole queue was lined up for me. It turned out people love robots. But several times the kids called me a transformer. I tried not to pay attention, and by the end of the day, I had enough money for a smartphone. The next day, I registered in TikTok and made a couple of videos about my life. I was so worried when I uploaded them. But in vain, 500 people subscribed to me every day. A few weeks later, I was already one of the most popular bloggers and was even able to rent an apartment. I didn't think it would be so easy. People wrote hundreds of comments, but no one from the previous life ever appeared. And I so wanted to know, was I a robot or was I originally born a human? I didn't even know who I was. But in any case, I knew I had feelings, but the fans were only interested in how I changed and whether I can touch the water. Once, a follower with the nickname Joker asked how my mood was. I was surprised, because everyone thought that robots were not in the mood by 85%. The Joker almost immediately offered to meet and I agreed. He spoke to me as if I were an ordinary person. The very next day, I was waiting for him in the cafe, and then a guy sat down at my table and introduced himself as the Joker. His face was scarred, and I was terrified. He immediately reached out to me and began to repeat, "Don't leave me. I love you." Hell, he was a psychopath. I mumbled that I had a lot to do and ran as fast as I could. The Joker started writing to me on all social media, but I blocked him everywhere. That's it! No more face-to-face meetings with fans. I kept using TikTok, hoping that someone from my past would notice me. But nothing happened. One day, I was returning home from an autograph session and suddenly I heard someone's footsteps. I turned around and saw a dark silhouette. I picked up the pace, but someone was shouting after me, "We need to talk." Oh no, it's the Joker, the crazy fan. I quickly ran back to the house and locked the door. Was he following me? The Joker was shouting something under the windows, but I didn't dare look out. With shaking hands, I called the police, and an hour later, a couple of big guys arrived and dragged the Joker away. I let out a sigh of relief and tried to sleep. This was already dangerous. I needed to delete TikTok and find another way to find out the truth about my past. The next day, I went to a fan meeting. There, I decided to say that I was done with TikTok and directly asked for help from my followers. When everyone gathered, I took a deep breath and said, "Friends, I don't really remember anything from my past. I don't know if I'm really a robot or a human." The room fell silent. I probably shouldn't have said that, but suddenly the audience burst out laughing. From all sides, it was hurt. She hypes! I had never felt so hurt in my life. In desperation, I ran to the back exit. None of the fans believed me. What a fool I was. When I opened the back door, I bumped into someone. I started to apologize, but then I was taken aback. This was the scientist. He looked even more creepy than he had a month ago. I backed away, but he pulled the remote out of his pocket and pressed the button. I immediately collapsed to the ground. What was going on? I couldn't even move. The scientist took my hand and dragged me along the ground. "Help me!" But no one heard my screams. I was finished. The scientist loaded me into his car and, muttering that the experiments were not over yet, got behind the wheel. The last thing I saw was the confused Joker sitting in the car outside the club. At that moment, the red light on my chest flashed again, and I blacked out. I came to myself in the same room. The scientist muttered softly that he was disappointed with my behavior. "I hope the next model will be more accommodating," he added. The scientist took out a saw and held it into my lap. Just a little bit and he would cut me into pieces. "No, please." But suddenly I heard some noise. The door opened and the Joker ran into the room. Behind him, the crowd of my fans was roaring. I couldn't believe my eyes. The fans threw the scientist to the floor and tied him up. The Joker took the remote out of his pocket and turned on my body. I didn't understand anything. Why would he do this? He was my crazy fan. But the Joker asked abruptly, "Don't you recognize me, Jen?" I frowned, puzzled. "What are you talking about?" The Joker smiled and said his name was Kyle. He was my groom. And I was kidnapped on my wedding day. These words made my throat go dry. So I was looking for him all this time. Kyle told me that we had loved each other since childhood and wanted to get married. But on the day of the wedding, we had an accident. Kyle was saved and he escaped with scars. And then he stopped talking. What happened to me? Kyle hesitated and said, "And you died right at the scene of the accident." I couldn't believe it. But how? Here I stand. I'm alive. Kyle said that before the funeral, my body was stolen, and he tried to find me, but in vain. He no longer believed that he would succeed, but suddenly he saw an interview with a robot that had my face. He thought he was imagining it. But he found me in TikTok and was stunned. I was alive. Tears welled up in my eyes, and suddenly I saw in the disfigured face of the Joker my dear Kyle, whom I had loved so much all my life. Oh, Kyle, it's so good that you found me. A few months later, we got married. Our wedding was discussed by the whole country. After that, twice as many people followed me, but I didn't care anymore. It was enough for me to have one person who saw me not as a freak from TikTok, but as an ordinary girl who also had feelings. I looked at Kyle and saw the most beautiful man on earth without even noticing the scars on his face. After all, love and kindness, that's what makes us truly beautiful. I turned to the mirror and didn't recognize myself in reflection. There was a huge scar all over my face. It was convex and vile. I was a real freak, so no guy could like me. Thank God that scar is fake. I'm participating in an experiment from one fashion magazine. The goal is to see if I can find a boyfriend with such an ugly scar on my face in 3 days. If I manage, I'll get paid $1,000. My family was poor, and I couldn't dress cool and buy modern gadgets like everyone's. I felt a little outcast because of that. It's so humiliating being a beggar. Albeit beautiful, so I really needed that money. The curator forbade any way to insinuate that my scar was fake. If it popped up, then I definitely would never get the money. And every 3 hours, I had to send them my pics to chat so they make sure the scar was intact. But the thing was that I cheated the curators from the beginning. I have got a boyfriend, so it's sure to be easy money. I'm confident in my boyfriend, Zach. He always said he would love me no matter what. I went to school, and everyone of course began to look back at me. Zach stood near the biology office and chatted animatedly with friends. Zach, I'm here. Seeing me, he staggered off. I lied that I had an accident, and I said I loved him very much. But Zach replied with abomination that he couldn't date such a freak and just walked away. What? How? But he told me he would always be around. I had a hard time sitting out my lesson. But then I ran to the toilet. I wanted to get this makeup off sooner. And then I heard some girls whispering next to the stall. One of them said handsome Zach had finally dumped that freak and had already asked the main cheerleader out on a date. I was so bitter and resentful, but Zach would yet regret abandoning me. I came out of the toilet and confidently went to the gym. There was usually rugby team captain Chris practicing. He and Zach had long been at odds. I will win Chris, get money for the experiment, and at the same time, take revenge on Zach dating with his arch enemy. I walked up to Chris and immediately started flirting. That's what I knew. But he just rolled with laughter. He said that I was a beggar woman, and now with an ugly scar. What a jerk. I wanted to leave and pushed Chris, but he cornered me and started taking photos of me on the phone. Get off, Chris. That's enough. But he held me so tight that I couldn't even run away. But suddenly someone called out to Chris. That was the nerd from my class, Cody. He said the coach was looking for Chris everywhere. He let me go and quickly left. And I told the nerd Cody that I would have managed myself. Cody immediately apologized and said he just wanted to help and then offered a ride to the house. I didn't want to be seen with this loser. But I didn't seem to mind a car ride. And then it turned out he had a stupid bicycle. While we were on the way, I burned with shame, but it was better than listening to the chuckles of passengers on the bus. And Cody looked at me that and then. What are you looking at, loser? And then I thought, Cody was perfect for the experiment. I will quickly fascinate this muff and show the curators that I still found a guy. So when we drove up to my house, I asked him out on a romantic date in gratitude for the rescue. But Cody suddenly hesitated and said abruptly he was very busy in the evening and immediately left. I didn't believe my eyes. Did he just reject me? Damn. And I have little time until the end of the experiment. The next day at school was even worse. Everyone at school knew about my ugliness and called me names. And Zach began to avoid me and even hit a couple of times. But that's okay. I'll survive it. Now my goal is the nerd Cody. So I threw a nice note with 2 tickets to the cinema in his locker and wrote that I would wait for him after the lessons at the black door. As soon as the bell rang, I headed eagerly there. Cody will be mine. But local hooligans were standing there instead of Cody. They quickly looked over, and the man ripped my backpack out of my hands. I tried to resist, but they grabbed me and held me while their ringleader searched for money in my backpack. And when he realized that there was nothing, he aimed it at a tree. Then I stepped on one guy's foot with all my strength and broke free. I wanted to take away my backpack, but I hurt my leg and bashed straight into the puddle. The guys only laughed loudly. When suddenly Cody appeared out of nowhere again. He so deftly knocked down the ringleader that the others immediately ran away.
Look at you, nerd!
He lifted me out of the dirt, took my backpack, and helped get to the bicycle. I asked him where he had learned this, to which he said he had once done karate. We were already late for the movie, so Cody offered to go home. This time I did mind. I even liked yesterday's bike ride. At home, Cody made me a compress, from which the pain in my legs subsided. This was the perfect moment to get closer. I had already bent over to kiss him, but suddenly Cody pulled away and asked, where did I get that scar from? Was he dumping me again? And then Cody looked at me with sympathy and admitted that he understood what it was like to have a defect on the body. Like no one else. What are you about? At this point, Cody unbuttoned his shirt and showed me a huge, ugly scar on his chest. I hadn't seen such in my life. It turned out that as a child, Cody underwent severe heart surgery, but the scar never went away. He was constantly bullied, and because of this, he even neglected his favorite occupation, swimming. Now he even did go to the beach so as not to undress. I suddenly became so embarrassed. I had only been scarred for 2 days, but I was really sick of the cheers. And the scar was fake, all for money. But for Cody, this was a real problem. At this moment, I received a reminder from the curator. Hurry up, there are only 2 days left. I realized there was an urgent need to act and invited Cody to the beach. When he saw me in a bikini, he would immediately agree to be my boyfriend. I began to say that scars should not prevent us from doing what we like, and that if I could walk around with a scar on my face, Cody should stop being shy too. I was scared that he would refuse me, but Cody said he had to think and would give an answer late in the evening. If he refuses, I won't get the money and everything was for nothing. So I was on edge all the evening. But suddenly a text came to me from Cody. He said he thought this through and would pick me up in the morning. The last day of experiment came in the morning and Cody and I went to the beach. There I began to strip to the swimsuit. Cody kept looking around and seemed very tense. I took his hand and said it wasn't as scary as he thought. He just had to decide once. Cody agreed and took off his shirt, but still tried to cover the scar with his hand. And that's where the ball came under our feet. It was Chris with his guys. They began to laugh at us and call us freaks from the Addams family. Cody immediately blushed, but I strongly took his hand. Let's go swimming, away from these dorks. We entered the water. Cody was delighted. It turned out he missed swimming a lot. We swam to a rock nearby that hid us from everywhere. Our eyes met, and Cody hesitatingly said he was in love with me in middle school. I did not expect this. He came close to kissing me, and I realized I didn't mind. But suddenly Cody changed in his face. Cody, what happened? I touched my scar, and I realized that silicone had peeled off the skin. I tried to stick it back, but it got worse. The scar just fell off my face. Oh no, I tried to explain to Cody about the experiment, but he didn't want to listen. He said he understood everything. I was with these rugby players and just wanted to expose him as an idiot. He immediately ran ashore and quickly left. Cody, wait! I came ashore and burst into tears at the understanding that Cody was the only one who treated me well. Even despite the scar and poverty, I messed it up. But at the same minute, the curator called via video link to find out the progress with the completion of the experiment and saw that there was no scar left. That's when the curator stated that they were depriving me of a cash prize. The experiment failed, but I didn't care. I cried for an hour and then headed home. And when I slammed the front door, someone knocked on it. It was Cody. He was probably following me. But Zach was on the doorstep, my ex. He quickly began to assure that he realized everything. I was the most beautiful girl in the world. I just had to tell him about the makeup right away. But I just slammed the door in front of Zach. I was very angry at this hypocrite and didn't want to listen to his apology. Then I decided that tomorrow I would apologize to Cody. He was now more important to me than any gadgets and money. In the morning, at school, I started looking for Cody. He sat in the dining room. I sat down nearby and started apologizing. It was all a terrible mistake, but Cody ignored me and headed for the exit. I didn't know what to do. In the meantime, I noticed how other guys were looking at me with sympathy. Screw you all. I only need Cody. Then I climbed on the table, called him loudly, and in front of everyone admitted that he was the best person I had ever met. I wanted to be with him, and I apologized for deceiving him. But Cody didn't even turn around. Was he gone and we would never be able to communicate again for the first time? I felt what it means when you lose a dear person. How suddenly Cody, pushing the crowd aside, climbed on the table and kissed me. Everyone around clapped and loved. I put my hand on Cody's chest and felt the scars, and suddenly I realized that the heart of an incredibly beautiful person was beating behind them. I whispered, "It doesn't matter what you have outside and what you look like. The main thing is what a soul you have." At the same moment, I received a text from the curator about a new experiment. I need to spend a year in a relationship without quarrels. I agreed and thought, what if Cody and I could live like this all our life?